Hi, Dad. Excited to dive into this unexpected topic that we kind of kickstarted last week when we were talking about GDP, and it led us into talking about some of the conversations that I'm having with clients. And one of those conversations has been around labor. So I appreciate you calling that out and suggesting that we do it for today's episode.
My pleasure. Being semi-retired, I'm not all that concerned about it, but
Fair.
but, be, but being a human being, I'm concerned about it. And being an economist, it's interesting. And I know that you're doing a lot with it, and this is, something that you're spending time on. And um, it's to me, it's a fascinating subject. We hear about a growing economy. The unemployment rate is low. And yet, some people have a hard time, as you pointed out, finding jobs, and other people have a hard time finding employees, which means there's a mismatch.
Mhm.
Skill sets are not aligned, is how I would look at it. There's some things that can be done, but there are things that are required on both sides for that to happen. If I have a skill set that is not in demand, I have to ask myself, well, what is in demand and can I become that? Is that something that I can do? Is that something I'm willing to do? And maybe we should start there. And in your work with businesses and how you know people a lot more than I know people, and know more people than I know for people. How hard is it to change? Let's say you're in your 30s, okay, not 70 like me. People don't change at 70, but if you're in your 30s, is it hard for people to say, it's time to give up that career? This isn't going anywhere. I'm going to become.
I don't think it's common. I don't know if I would qualify it as how hard or how not hard. I think it's probably more of a mindset because I think too, you know me, I'm a take over the world kind of a mindset. So to me, it's well, if that's not working, stop doing it and do something else. But that's not a normal mindset for people. It could be, well, I invested in my college, I invested in my degree, I've spent all this time, the last 10 years building up my career. I shouldn't have to switch. Well, that's nice, but if the labor force isn't demanding your type of job anymore and you need a job, then there's a decision there to be made. So Frank could be a good example. He's what, 42 and just left his job this year, and he's talking about going back to college for a trade of some kind. He's leaning into like HVAC and taking the next few years to get through that and go into the HVAC industry and stuff. So I don't think that's normal, but it just goes to show that it is possible. Um, Having said that, though, I think it also depends on your living situation. I think with consumers having higher cost of living in so many different areas, it could not be financially possible for them to make the changes that they might otherwise want to make.
That really some excellent points in through there. And I want to touch on them, hopefully not belabor them. When I was your age, it was perfectly normal for somebody to change careers 6 times in their working life. And I did it. I started off as an accountant, became an economist in between, did some entrepreneurial stuff, and it's just uh, as you know, the pastoral thing. I mean, I moved along to different things, and that was perfectly normal. I'm not sure it's as normal today. I'd have to look at the numbers because I think there's more constraint today because of the things you mentioned. Now, with Frank, it's a great example, a perfect example. The guy has all kinds of skills. He can do all kinds of things. But if you were dependent upon his paycheck, he would not have the ability to necessarily just trot off to HVAC school.
Mhm.
But he could, because I'm a trustee, as you know, for the system, the community college system of New Hampshire. They teach HVAC at night and on weekends for working people so that they
Oh,
can learn a new career.
oh, that's cool.
And everybody that graduates gets a job. Every welder gets a job. I mean, there's a line of employers just waiting for another group to graduate. So it's got to be that willingness to change career because what Frank was doing is nothing like HVAC. I
Right.
mean, he's actually a model of how to do it. Okay, this stinks. I'm tired of this. And I just don't like where I'm working anymore. I'm tired of the people I'm working with. What's needed? As opposed to how can I go find someone and do the same thing?
Right.
Because you're probably not going to like it there either because it's the same thing you didn't like doing.
Yep.
Uh, so it's a mindset thing on the part of the person. Financially trapped is the difficulty.
Hmm.
You have to financially untrap yourself, which means a change in lifestyle, or you do it in the evening and on weekends so that you can get into something else, or you revert to something you used to do before. Now, this is going to sound stupid, so bear with me, okay?
Okay.
Because let's say that I'm doing something in the service industry, uh, working in a business. I don't care what it is, and you're making 75,000 a year. All right. And you don't like your job, you don't like where you're working, you apply a bunch of places, nobody's hiring you. Where are they hiring? Wait staff.
Mhm.
And in a good restaurant, wait staff make a good living. Now you're working nights and you're working some weekends or you're working weekends. So it's a change in lifestyle, but that doesn't mean that you can't go back to something you used to do when in college you did it. And maybe now that you're 35, you can go back and do it again and make a good living. Because really, when you thought back, I kind of enjoyed that job. Just didn't seem like a career.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I know somebody who was in the insurance industry, loved the job, but just decided to go off and do something else
Mm.
and found it. And maybe that is not in people as much as it used to be. You know, I can go do something else. I can be something else. I can be entrepreneurial as a risk, but you can start that part-time. As you know, people do that all the time. Um, is that lacking in America?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's fear that keeps a lot of people from changing things up so drastically. Again, financial constraints. I don't know if it's expectations are out of whack, where they say, well, at one point I had, now I don't, and that's what I want again, but maybe that doesn't exist anymore. And so you have to be willing to try something new to see if you can make it something even better
Yeah,
than what you think back to it. My favorite job was that, like, Frank always reminisce, his favorite job was working for Comcast and installing cable. And so that was a lot of the conversation he and I had was like, well, why was that your favorite job? It's not just jump back to Comcast and install cable again because you left that job for a reason. So there must have been reasons why you didn't like it or you wanted something different or better. But I think it's a exercise, a thoughtful exercise people need to go through of why did I like that or what about it did I like, and then looking for those qualities versus staying in the same industry or the same type of position.
yeah. So Frank was the cable guy. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. They made
Yeah.
movies with him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that's kind of where we landed or started heading towards the HVAC, is because he really liked working with his hands and installing things and getting to see, like, he fixed things when they were broken and stuff. It is more instant gratification.
Okay, so on one side of the equation, we have individuals who have to examine themselves, say, all right, this isn't available. I don't like where I'm at. Doing it somewhere else isn't available. So I got to search myself. What else can I do that I would enjoy, or at least I'm willing to try,
Mhm.
and find a financial path for doing it, or find a different way to get the skill set. Not easy, not easy at all, but entirely doable for the person who has that thing inside them that pushes them to do it. And for others, it's painfully difficult because you go to work every day not liking your job, not liking where you're working, and feeling stuck. What a horrible, horrible way to be. I feel
Yeah.
bad for folks.
No, I do
But
too. Oh, I was just gonna, if I can add to that really quickly, I
mm,
likened it recently in a conversation that I had with someone to buying a house. Because there's pros and you go in thinking my dream house and it's gonna have this many bedrooms and it's gonna look this way. So just picture, like, when you're house shopping, you're like, this is the picture of what I want for my house. You never get the perfect house. And there's always pros and cons, and you end up settling. But during that process, you just, like, you end up identifying what are your must-haves and what are your want-to-haves. And the must-haves are what you're actually out there looking for in a job versus the nice-to-haves. If it has the nice-to-haves, great, but at least it has the must-haves. And so that was an example that I used with somebody recently where it's just like it can be really stressful buying a new house, moving, getting into the new house, getting it settled in. But you do it because you know it's that next best chapter in your life. So you go through all that pain, that anxiety, that stress because you know it's going to move you that next step. And you know that it's all right to settle along the way because life isn't perfect. And so you just need to know what are your bare minimum must-haves. Is it location? Is it bedrooms? Is it bathrooms? Is it granite versus laminate? Whatever the case may be. And then that's what you look for.
Sure. And in the business world, sometimes it's titles, sometimes it's the healthcare plan as opposed to the amount of day, PTO. And so you got to figure that out for yourself and make it work. Yeah, absolutely. I like it. So it's not for everybody, but for those that want to, you got to find it within you to take that risk because there's a risk involved.
Hmm.
And you got to find a way to mitigate the risk and take the risk at the same time, some risk. All right,
Yep.
let's go to the employer side. All right. I think employers um, can work hard at making themselves a good place to work, but fail to convey that. And others, they don't really care. They still don't really care. This is, they put this nice signs up to make it look like it, but they don't treat people the way that people want to be treated necessarily. They certainly don't treat them as an integral part of making this all work. It's employers who don't share information, who certainly don't share the money, don't share responsibility, just follow my directions. I don't care if they're offering $3 an hour more than the next company on the next block. That place isn't worth working for because after a while, that $3 an hour doesn't mean a thing to you because your boss treats you like garbage or treats you as not garbage, something unimportant. You don't matter that much here, Kim. So let's just,
Like, fine, then I'm out.
that's right. Those firms exist. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And culture is another. Now, I think culture is a CEO responsibility.
Mhm.
So if there's a crappy culture in a company, it's the CEO's fault.
Kathleen would be so happy with you right now. Sing it from the rooftops, Dad.
Well, you can blame whoever you want, but but it's true because not only do you have to set the example, you have to enforce it. You have to reiterate it. You have to make sure that if somebody's not living to the culture you want, you fire their sorry butt and you get them out of there because they're ruining your company. And so many CEOs will go, yeah, but boy, really good engineer, really good boss, really good. And you go, I'm sorry, if that's more important than culture, then I'm about to use a bad word. You're a bad boss. Bad boss, bad boss.
Bad boss.
CEOs are often responsible for the culture and then the pay. CEO, if you can, stockholders, small company, entrepreneur, whatever it is, you have to pay them better than a competitive wage, or else you're just like everybody else. I can't stand it when people say, I pay a competitive wage. I go to myself, say to myself often, unless I'm on the board, I say to myself, so what? Everybody else is paying a competitive wage.
Oh.
Ooh, I can buy a car from three dealerships for exactly the same price. Ooh, there's an incentive.
Good job with a competitive advantage.
Yeah, exactly. Janie Smith would throw up. I mean, it's when you're hiring, you have to have a competitive advantage, and often that's pay and benefits.
Mm.
Sometimes it's paying off portion of their college loans. I mean, there's so many ways that companies to do it, and they don't do it. And then they wonder why people don't stay. They have turnover and they can't hire. I'm going, well, this is not that hard, folks, unless you're living in the middle of New Mexico where there's nobody to hire. This is not that hard. And if it's a skill set thing, I'm going to pay you really well while I'm training you. All I want you to do is promise me you're going to work for me for 3 years because I'm paying for all this training. And then after that, if they leave with all that training, that's on you because you didn't have the culture to keep them in place. It's like, am I oversimplifying it, Kim? Do you see something I'm missing here?
No, I think that's definitely a part of the problem and a very common situation. I work with Kathleen, as you know, from KQV Speaks and Talent Trust, for those listening in. She calls it employee experience instead of culture, because we as business leaders tend to focus very heavily on the client experience and making sure there is client satisfaction from beginning to end and making sure that we have that down pat, but we don't put the same effort as leaders into the employee experience. So I like how she calls it an employee experience instead of culture. And in talking with her, a lot, or something that I've just picked up on, is that the CEO often defers it as an HR problem. HR defers it as this is a leadership problem. So there's lack of alignment between HR and the leadership team. It is a leadership issue. It's not an HR issue. And a lot of HR folks are very focused on the laws and the rules and the regulations and all of that stuff, not the employee experience. And then another thing that I've heard her mention a lot is that it's middle management that tends to
Mm,
be the weak point, and it's because they're managing up to leaders and trying to stay on their good side, and so they don't have strong support from their leaders, and so they're just burnt out from always managing up. And then when it comes time to manage down, they're stretched so thin that they don't give the same level of care and they end up picking favorites. And those are the people that are happy and stay. And everybody else are the folks that end up grumbling behind the curtain and end up causing a toxic environment. So it was that middle management tier that tends to be a weak point in a lot of these larger organizations.
but, that makes a lot of sense. And I might add one more thing, and correct me if you think I'm wrong. A lot of these middle managers were never trained.
Yeah.
They're just
And they
kind of
don't think
promoted
they're
into
wrong.
yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
Mhm.
They have a title manager. Hey, I'm happy, but I'm screwing things up without realizing I'm screwing things up. If you don't treat people the same and you pick favorites, you're automatically creating a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The lack of training. And again, that points towards the leadership not having the right experience put into place and dedicated resources and programs and guardrails and support and all of that across all of their different tiers of employees.
Right. I'm going to bring up one more thing that I think businesses that I'm aware of don't necessarily do very well. I'm going to put it that way. And that is people like to know they're working for a company that does well financially, but they also do good things.
Mhm.
And I think most businesses are too cheap. I think they're more worried about their bonus and the bonuses, and they don't give nearly enough to the community because people working say, and SRC is a great example of this, right? Jack Stack.
Mhm.
They do so much good, and people are involved, they're engaged. You don't have to be an ESOP to do this, but they know that by going to work, creating profit, they're going to help people eat. They're going to help people with mental illness. They're going to help people with the drug addiction. Drug addiction may be a bad one because most people blame the drug addict, and that's another discussion we'll have another day. But the reality is they like to know they're having a positive impact. That's just the culture we live in now.
Mhm.
And so you may put it up to a group vote where our top three charities, it may be St. Jude's, it may be, families in transition, whatever it happens to be. They want to know that part of what they're doing goes to help somebody else. And I don't think businesses do that well. They may give some money, but they don't talk about it.
Mhm.
They may give a little bit of money, but when you're taking home $100,000 bonus, five executives, and your giving for the year was $20,000, that's really not impressive. And then you say you don't have money for big bonuses for everybody. I mean, it's just the system's gotten really screwed up, in my opinion. I'm not for communism. I'm not for socialism. But I'm for recognition. I remember one of my first speaking engagements was for Vistage in Michigan. I met this guy, and he's the first one to mention open book to me.
Mhm.
And so that was 30 plus years ago. And They had very low turnover because everybody knew what was going on. Everybody participated in the well-being of the company. They knew the company had tried to help the community. So everybody felt a community. And I know I didn't make as much as the boss. I know I didn't make as much as the top engineer, but I knew I was getting paid well for what I did. And that when there was fruits to be had, they were sharing the fruit with me. And I don't know, Kim. Maybe I'm just having a bad Wednesday, but I don't see enough of that anymore. And I think it's probably the study I'm doing for us on income inequality that's driving me right now.
Hmm.
Uh, and we're going to talk about that in a few weeks as I continue to look into it. But the reality is, why aren't we doing more to, I don't know what the right word is. Again, I'm not a communist, I'm not a socialist, but I think there's more that we can do to have our people want to work for us, tell people what a great place we are, so that we can all make good money.
And it is possible. I don't know how common or not common it is for these companies, corporations. I don't know if it varies by size of company. If the smaller businesses tend to be more I'm awful at saying that word, tend to give back to the community more than the large corporations. I haven't done a study into seeing like what those data points and analytics look like. I know it's probably very easy to say in today's economic environment, I'm being squeezed on both ends of my business. I just don't have it this year to give. I'm sure that that's probably a very easy thought process to have. But then again, my logical side of my brain then goes to tax deductions and this and that. Like there's still benefit to you to doing these different things. So why wouldn't you do it? Because you can still benefit another in other ways from doing this. Um, so I don't know. That I'd be interested in knowing that though, if it does range or differ based upon type or like size of company.
Yeah, and as a percentage of earnings is the way to do it because you can hear that some company gave $10 million and it's like, wow, that's really amazing. But when you consider how much the company made or how much the owner's worth is, let me give you an example. And this is going to sound like I'm in favor of socialism. I'm not for the fourth time. But the mayor of New York is putting on or wants to put on a billionaire tax. If you have a second home, you have to pay a special tax on your second home. Now, these are for billionaires only, okay? And the tax would come to, for average or for most people, most of them, $12.9 million dollars a year, which sounds like, holy cow, what kind of tax is that? Are you crazy? These people are going to pay 12 point. But then the article said, now, if you're making $100,000 a year instead of what they're making, because they're billionaires, that would be asking you for additional $25 in taxes.
Mm, wow. That puts it into perspective.
So you read these numbers and you go, wow, that's really generous. But if you put it as a percentage of wealth or income, it's like, well, I appreciate the money, but really?
Mm. No, so
Yeah.
percent of earnings, it's a really good point. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. Um, I don't know if you have more on that particular point in the labor, but one of the other things that I'm talking with people a lot about is skilled labor and not having the readiness of the right skilled labor, whether that's because of like they're very location specific. I mean, these are say manufacturers or things along that line. Um, they're not finding people in their area or people willing to move to their area to fill these voids. You had mentioned briefly on last week's episode apprenticeship or there's as an idea to help offset some of that pressure that they're feeling there. What other ideas would you have a recommendation for those folks that are having issues with skilled labor?
Well, if you can attract people to you where you are, you open up a second or third or whatever facility where there are people.
Hmm.
You know, you may not want to leave North Dakota, but that doesn't mean everybody wants to go to North Dakota. And I've seen businesses do that. So you open up a shop in Texas and it becomes very successful. You have to work at it, but it becomes successful because that's where the population is. And then it can be a younger population than North Dakota too. So It's a question of being flexible and expending some money to get the labor you need to grow that major. You start off with a very profitable product line. Um, you got to spend some money to keep that going and growing as you go forward. So if it's not an apprenticeship, it's move some operation to where some people are.
Hmm,
It's pretty simple.
that's a good idea.
Thank you. I'm done for the day. I've reached my break.
Affirmation, affirmation. You don't need AI today. You got me.
It is a perplexing issue. Maybe we should have on uh, somebody who's really good at this. Maybe Kathleen would like to join us to talk about this sometime because we're talking about our experiences and what we've seen. She lives it every day, so maybe she would like to do 10 minutes with us or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll reach out to her and ask. I think that would be great. I
Uh,
think that those of you that are listening in will really appreciate um, her perspective because she does live this every day and she has a lot. She's been doing this for 20 plus years and has just a lot of experience in all of this. Now, Dan,
Right.
any closing thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up for today?
Just that it is not an insolvable problem. It
Mm,
just may cause people to think differently than they have been thinking for the last 20 years, but it is not insolvable.
I like it. That's a great place for us to end. Thank you again for recommending that we pick this topic up. And now I believe next week we're talking about yen, right?
I, I have a yearning to talk about the end. So yes, we.
A yearning to talk about the yen. I think that's a first. All right. Well, thank you. And I will see you next week.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.